Empower to Integrate, a collaborative initiative by Aditus Foundation and the African Media Association Malta. This program is dedicated to advancing integration and social inclusion for third country nationals in Malta. It is funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, co-funded by the European Union and carried out in collaboration with the Parliamentary Secretariat for European Funds.
Welcome to the Empower to Integrate project. This is a platform for third country nationals to help them boost their visibility, amplify their voices, and share their perspective. It also aims to strengthen community empowerment and build social ties in Malta. Hi, I'm Nazli Mayu, and I'm the project lead strategist and radio host. Today, we will be discussing the role of media and how it shapes public perception of migrants. I'd like to introduce and welcome to the studio Elif Acar, who is married and originally from Turkey. She's been living in Malta for the past 10 years and is the chief editor of Malta Haber, an accredited news platform, which is the first and only Turkish news website in Malta. It was established in 2020 and is a crucial community platform that amplifies the voices of Turkish diaspora. It has become a trusted voice for thousands of Turkish people, where it informs, connects, and empowers them. They are quietly building stronger ties between Malta and Turkey, one story at a time, to help them integrate into society. Their goal is to deliver news to the Turkish community in Malta without any language barriers, and their mission is to preserve culture, support integration, strengthen a sense of belonging, and address challenges that the community may be facing. Welcome, Elif, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to Mallia, who is a research and support officer at the University of Malta. She's worked on EU-funded research projects undertaken by the Department of Media and Communications within the University of Malta's Faculty of Media and Knowledge Sciences. Their main project is the Mediterranean Digital Media Observatory, which brings together journalists and media researchers from Malta, Greece, and Cyprus, as well as the AFP, working to counter the global disinformation crisis. Hello, Megan, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, and thank you so much for the invitation.
You're welcome. Elif, I'd like to ask you, can you tell us more about Malta Haber, why it was created for Turkish nationals living in Malta, and the impact it's made so far?
Do you remember those first days of the pandemic, and like everywhere was closed and we couldn't go out, like the traveling was just impossible, and there was so much uncertainty everywhere, and so that's actually when Malta Haber was born. And our founder, Mr. Ziya Albeniz, and he realized that the Turkish community in Malta needed a way to get news and important updates during that such a difficult times in their own language without any language barrier. So as Mr. Ziya Albeniz started Malta Haber as a small hobby project during those long quarantine days. And back then, we were only 500 Turkish people living in Malta, but the need for connection and information was huge. Mm-hmm. So on that time, in 2020 March, and we started, and since then since that time we are here and continuing. So Malta Haber started as a way to help people stay informed and feel a bit more at home, and especially during such a difficult times, and helped Turkish residents to not only keep up with the news, also feel more connected and integrated into the Maltese society. So the impact has been really positive, and we are so proud to keep supporting our community.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And what a powerful way to keep your community connected whilst in Malta during that time. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Megan, what role do you think the Maltese media can play to help boost social inclusion with local communities and third country nationals?
Oh, definitely a huge role, and they probably have one of the most important roles, I think, in doing so. I mean, the media, everyone is reading the media and consuming it. I think obviously projects like Empower to Integrate and the whole work that African Media Association is doing and also your own projects as well, or your own newspaper. I think these are also important, but mainstream-wise, I think it's all about representation, challenging the idea of the single story, the stereotypes, humanization. So migration, especially in Malta, the way it's reported and also the way it's spoken about on social media, there's a lot of dehumanization. You see a lot of figures going around, like population statistics, for example. I think it's really important to actually put a human face to stories. Ultimately, that's how you're going to basically boost social inclusion, That's it.
That is a very powerful statement, putting the human first, before thinking about their titles or nationalities, or giving them words, in terms of language that we use. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Elif, despite third country nationals taking steps to integrate into Malta, like attending English workshops, working, paying their taxes, contributing to the economy, within Malta, it still feels that the media's narratives are shaping the nation's opinions on identity and belonging in Malta. How can we reframe this in a positive way?
I'm a Turkish, and Turkey isn't European country, but it's large and powerful nation. And so, as a Turkish journalist living in Malta as an expat, I would like to share my perspective. And there are more than 8,000 Turkish people living in Malta today, and for many Turks, Malta is the first choice language schools because it's close to Turkey, and also it's great location for holiday. Most of us live here like as expats. So I would like to give some example about media attitude, like when the media is approaching about some issues, and if they are pointing and highlighting the nations, or it's something is not exactly the situation, but if they're highlighting the only where they are from and what they did, it's I think not so accurate and fair. For example, many years ago, one Turkish man, and he had unfortunately very sad traffic accident here. The story is so sad, I don't want to go into it. It was a very tragic car accident, and sadly someone lost their life. But after the whole investigation and all the experts came and found that Turkish driver was not at fault. So, and that Turkish man living in Malta more than 25 years, and he is Maltese citizen as well, and he speaks very fluent Maltese and English as well. So, but the media, on that time, media was speaking like Turkish killer man, and without giving any other information. And he had a business here, he lost everything, and his life ruined, and he lost, like even now, like after many years, when you saw him, you can see the pain, like when he's talking. So in the other hand, into 2023, and there was another tragic event, an interior designer, Pelin Kaya, and was killed, and the person who did this, the murderer, and he has French mother and Maltese father. He born in France but grew up in Malta, went to school here and lived all life here in Malta. And I spoke even with his neighbors and with his school friends, and they said like he's typical like Maltese man, even with his English accent is like Maltese. So he has a very long criminal record. On that day he went out with the intention to kill someone. There is a messages. So, but the media was called always like the French guy, but he was, like, we have to be, as a journalist, as a media professionals, we have to be accurate and fair. Of course, an entire nation or country cannot be held responsible for the mistake for one individual. Or, of course, I'm not trying to compare the nations, but I simply giving examples to highlight how the media language and approach can shape the way events are understood. I think this shows what we need: objectivity and fairness in the media. As journalists, our first goal should always be to be accurate and fair. So we should be very sensitive about this.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you. Megan, if I could ask you, have you seen any positive shifts in tone or sentiments with the public in recent years as more third country nationals contribute to the economic growth of the country and by taking on roles that most Maltese people wouldn't consider doing?
So it's a mix, and I say that sadly because you would hope that it's all positive, right? But it is a mix because unfortunately you can't ignore that there are people who still have this negative idea about third country nationals, especially. So I can understand so many people use the excuse, I'm going to call it that, of, you know, we're overpopulated. And as Medmo, you mentioned the Mediterranean Digital Media Observatory before, we have actually fact-checked a lot of claims about population statistics, so people claiming that there are far more foreigners than there actually are, and these posts are actually very shareable. They go viral very quickly on Facebook, and they fuel this anger and hatred towards, you know, non-Maltese people. And sadly, the people who are always first to get the blame are the people who are visibly not Maltese. So then you get all this racial hatred, and, you know, this a complete, it's like a cyclical thing, right? The echo chambers on social media especially. So you get trapped in this negative bubble. And in fact, you can notice the connotation. So most people, when you speak to them, when you speak about immigration, for example, they make a very big distinction between an expat and an immigrant. Which is sad because, again, there are these, you know, arguments of race, and it just gets into, you know, this ugly racial battle, which is really horrible. But again, there are positive aspects as well, obviously. I mean, positive, so you were saying positive shifts in tone, that's what I'm referring to. On a micro level, you see it when people actually get to know people, you know, as a person rather than the way they might be portrayed or perceived because of stereotypes. I saw this a lot at Blue Door Education when I used to teach there. Sometimes you're easily going in with an idea that, you know, these people are refugees sort of thing, and you get a certain picture in your mind. But then you start to learn about these people and their lives. You find that you're actually speaking to, you know, people like accountants, and, you know, they had a whole life, but they actually had to uproot themselves because of war, for example. So I really believe that that is one of the biggest ways you can actually challenge stereotypes. So that's why I mentioned, well, I was going to mention storytelling is such an important part of it. So learning about people's stories and their lives as human beings rather than as the stereotype you might, you know, associate them with. And again, going back to what I said before, putting a human face to stories. So and this is a huge responsibility of the media too. I do see positive shifts in Malta. The newspapers are trying to do this. For example, there was a really horrible case a few years ago. He was a construction worker. I can't remember his nationality at the moment, but he was actually injured in a fall in a construction site, and his boss told him he was going to take him to hospital. He actually dumped him on the side of the road. That was a story which got picked up quite a bit. They interviewed him, and the public got to see him as a person and not just a number. And I think that is so important.
Thank you for sharing that. Elif, what are some consequences that you may have observed when one side of the migrant story is told? This is based on the concept of the single narrative, and it's only from the public's perspective.
I think it's really important to remember the most migrants here, non-EU, here in Malta, and have actually gone through a serious visa process. So they're here legally with the permissions and from the Maltese government to stay and work. So I believe we should treat them with respect and fairness. and just like anyone else, because they are human being. So yes, it is true that the migrant populations in Malta is growing, but these people are just not showing up from out of nowhere, and so they have visas, they follow the rules, and they wanted to build a life here. So I think it's only fair to be objective and not judge them based on just one story or stereotypes. So sometimes when we only hear one side of the migrant story, it can lead to misunderstanding or negative feelings. People might start to believe things that aren't true, or forget that migrants also face some challenges and contribute to our society. That's why it's so important to look at the whole picture and try to understand their experiences. Of course, integration is a big topic. It's very important, and the government has some programs and think both government has some programs to help, and I think also the workplaces must do something, can do more, support the migrants and help them to feel of the community. And it's something we should all think about, like how we can make Malta a welcoming place for everyone.
Thank you for sharing that there. So picking up on seeing the person as the human and also using critical thinking. So there's so much information that we find on the internet and things go viral, is thinking, okay, who is this person if I was in their shoes, and being more empathetic. That's what I'm picking up from what you're saying. So thank you for sharing that there. But staying on the concept of the single narrative, Megan, in relation to migration, why do you think this happens in the Maltese context? And what stories are being left out to create a balanced overview regarding the views on migrants or third country nationals?
Well, first of all, I think this is really interesting that it happens in Malta. We have such a rich history of being colonized. I mean, we're supposed to be used to having, non-Maltese people on the island. And of course, there's also the story, the biblical tale of St. Paul's shipwreck. It's from there where people get the idea that the Maltese are very welcoming, So I always compare what I see, like the attitudes of Maltese people generally now, to things like that, because it's just so difficult to understand. But I really think that this kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, it's kind of like a fear or hatred or whatever of like the non-Maltese person. I think it has a lot to do with our insularity as a small Mediterranean nation. And southern Mediterranean culture. So the nuclear family is very prioritized. We're very tribal in our ways. I mean, you see this from everything from religion to politics. I mean, it's literally like a football match. So there's always this fear and, this sense, again, like hatred and, disgust of the other side. And I think this really applies to the way we treat people who aren't basically Maltese. I say we generally, I'm not like this myself, as you can probably tell. So there's this polarization. You asked me what's left out, so the stories left out. Again, human stories. So, I mean, migration isn't just, refugees coming here by boat. That's generally the idea we get. But when there are like these horrible tragedies of a boat sinking or not being let in or being pushed back, we're only given the numbers.
Yes.
And you don't actually get the image in your mind of a person, of a mother and a child, a father or whatever it is. So again, these human stories, I think some media is, again, doing a good job of it and actually, telling the stories that need to be told. I would like to see more of that, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Elif, what pressures do third country nationals face when presenting themselves in a certain way to fit in or wear masks? And how can journalists sensitively report on these identity aspects which impacts their mental well-being?
So as a Turkish person who is living in Malta for 10 years, and I never really tried to fit in or wear mask because where I came, Turkey is a modern country, and I studied at the university for 4 or 5 years in Turkey, and also, of course, I want to learn about the culture, history, and daily life of the country I live in right now. So. At home in Malta, I have a library about 2,000 books, and many of them Maltese, and I've read a lot of Maltese culture and history books because and also like I took courses in Malta about the Maltese culture, and I've been almost everywhere in Malta, some of the places, museums or historical places, maybe many times. I do those things not because I try to fit in or wear a mask, because I love here and I love to being here, the culture, the people, interest, right? And that's why, for example, when I was at the university, I went to the other state. The culture was slightly different, and I was like that there because I am living there and I want to know the culture. So. Again, I am speaking for Turkish people. There are many Turkish people in Malta who are involved in different arts. Some artists even work with the local council and the organizations. And there are Turkish teachers here and doctors in Materdi or any other hospitals. Popular Turkish restaurants and Turkish people working in high position in the companies. So there are really good engineers in Malta. There is even a Turkish theater group. They're actively going on stage. These people live here as expats. They stayed with the visa and they work. So of course, sometimes we take courses to adapt to society. And I also went, and naturally. And so even like I am trying to learn a Maltese language because maybe I cannot speak fluently, but you know, I want to know the spirit of the language because I am here that I love. So naturally we need to adapt to flow of the life here. So for example, like there are slight different things, and like the working hours sometimes different in some sectors in Malta, and for example some sectors they start at 6 a.m. in the morning. We have to know that and respect that if we are living here. So the traffic on the other side, of course we have to respect and go and take a course, and we have to take other driving license. So but we need to adapt these things. I wouldn't call it trying to fit in or wearing mask, to be honest.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. It's quite interesting, and I can feel your passion in terms of not wanting to fit in but still learn about Malta and its culture and the society and integrate, but also bring yourself authentically to the place where you're staying. Thank you. Megan, if I could ask you, what did you consider best practices for responsible journalism when covering migration, you know, especially in a small, close-knit country like Malta, and how can this help shape policies within the government?
So best practices, well, as with any journalism, any journalistic story you're working on, you should always prioritize accuracy and truthfulness. Usually people say objectivity, so you mentioned it before, but honestly, this is a personal opinion. I go more for the idea of truthfulness than neutrality. So rather than presenting two sides as, you know, equal things, for example, I mean, you can think of corruption stories. Rather than presenting two sides as equal things, you say, hey, this is wrong, for example. You know, you take a stand. And same with migration. So I don't know if I'm going off the question here in case it's stopping me. But for example, if you've got a story where the Prime Minister is claiming X about refugees, for example, don't just report it. Say that, you know, no, there's this context to think about, and no, this is wrong. We should be thinking about this, for example. You know, giving context and not just reporting, but actually investigating, giving the facts, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, context is all, and yeah, as I'm saying, don't just report, but go deeper into it. And I think best practices also go beyond the media outlet itself. So now, I mean, we have social media. Most newspapers use social media as well. I think personally that the outlets have a responsibility to actually manage those accounts properly. Again, social media, you have echo chambers and things go viral fast. So if you've got comments which are just repeating, like, you know, negative statements or whatever it is, hate speech, I think the outlet has a responsibility to actually go in and, you know, moderate. And this isn't a violation of freedom of expression, because most people say, no, hey, this is free speech, I can say what I want. You can't. You have a responsibility to say things responsibly. And hate comments are not free speech. I mean, arguing that, I don't know, I'm going to use a horrible one, which I have seen again and again. For example, refugees should be left to drown. I've heard people saying this, and I've seen it online a lot. Or people saying, you know, go back to your country. But for example, the case of the drowning one, it's like the equivalent of saying, I don't know, maybe not to the same extreme, this example, but it's like saying women shouldn't have the vote or slaves shouldn't be freed. This isn't freedom of expression, right?
No.
I mean, there are certain things which are just wrong. So best practices, yes, I think news outlets have a responsibility also to their audiences by moderating this sort of thing.
Thank you very much. And my final question to you, just very briefly, how else can Malta Harbour work with the government here in Malta in terms of improving policies around migration?
In Malta Harbour, as I told you before, we started as a platform like beginning of the pandemic and during those uncertain times, and to help Turkish speakers in Malta and communicate more easily in their own language. So Malta Harbour is accredited by the Department of Information Malta, and our team is made up so entirely voluntaries. So I truly believe that every language has their own spirit, and communication, your mother tongue is, you know, all the time. It's always feel more comfortable and understood. So Malta Harbour has a special series like it's Life in Malta and also Work Guide. These are really well researched articles about every daily life in Malta, and like how to rent an apartment, how to get driving license, and also like different type of visas and taxes, those kind of things. We also share really great information about the Maltese culture and history. We are researching and doing really good articles about Malta. So we have another we developed one expat GPT. It is AI powered, and also it's giving in English and in Turkish. It's giving information about Malta and write like about the taxes or the works and other things about Malta. It's giving good informations. So we also organize some English workshops, like which is like we are trying to help our community to improve their skills. So there are also, I told you, too many talented people in Malta, Turkish. So I can say so all of this is very valuable. I'm so proud. And of course, anytime if the Maltese government or any Maltese media or any organization would like to work with us, we're also always so open and fair and for the cooperation. So we can do anytime, like in, of course, like fair and honesty, and our door is always open to all good people.
Thank you very much for sharing that there. I'd like to thank Elif and Megan for joining us today and sharing their experiences and their expertise, and just thank you once again for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Empower to Integrate, a collaborative initiative by Aditus Foundation and the African Media Association Malta. This program is dedicated to advancing integration and social inclusion for third country nationals in Malta. It is funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, co-funded by the European Union and carried out in collaboration with the Parliamentary Secretariat for European Funds.